I'm extremely glad you brought this topic up, by the way, because now I want to move into this really specialist segment that I've done a lot of research on lately.
Which
So,
is
in my old university, they have established the world number one or first official psychedelic research center at Imperial College, headed by the guy Robin Cohart Harris,
okay.
who's basically a very, very knowledgeable doctor.
Okay, I've heard people using LSD to treat
That's right.
PTSD.
That's
Is
right.
Wait,
that's
is that
exactly
from your school?
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Oh.
They have done extensive research on psychedelic LSD, shrooms, even DMT on how to. So they focus on three things. So mental health, social issues, and neuroscience. Right.
Okay.
So for the neuroscience of shrooms, I'll slowly get into this first. Right. Shrooms, the active ingredient, as you guys might know, is psilocybin. Psilocybin is actually not that reactive in your brain, but actually gets digested enzyme into psilocin, which then attaches itself. It's not a full attachment, but it's like a partial attachment to your brain H2A neural receptor, which is the receptor for serotonin.
Yeah.
Happiness.
Yeah,
The
Chemical.
hormone
It's been
associated with happiness.
It's been told as the love hormone, the happiness hormone, and whatnot.
And the thing that I lack, that's why I need to take SSRI on a day-to-day basis.
Yes, right. So all our antidepressants try to activate that receptors too.
Serotonin.
Exactly. So that receptor is actually in the cortex of your brain. So
Yeah.
what the cortex is the outer layer. Now you might think, oh, cortex is kind of center, right? So there's actually subcortex and more layers in your brain, but the cortex is
Yeah.
kind of like the outer layer, right? It doesn't target a very specific region of your brain, like the motor cortex or the visual cortex. It's kind of like general cortex, right?
Okay.
So they have done extensive research on how psilocybin reacts with your brain in terms of they do fMRI, so functional magnetic resonance imaging, which is kind of taking a snapshot, kind of X-ray for your brain.
All right. So sorry to disrupt you. I'm curious. Like when you mean like extensive research, do you mean like they do it with like mice?
No.
Or they
Humans.
actually have
Actual humans, actual
okay.
brains.
So they
Right.
have like people to like volunteers. Yo, I'm gonna give you some DMT today,
Exactly.
and then I'm gonna
Yeah.
scan your brain and see
Exactly.
how your brain is doing.
Yeah.
Oh,
All of this is funded. All of this is legal, of course. Though,
damn it!
first of
I should
all,
have signed up.
right, we forgot to do this disclaimer, but we'll do it now. You know, this is just a normal show. We don't,
We don't claim any expertise.
Yeah, we
and-
don't claim
We
expertise.
also don't condone drug
Yeah, we don't
use.
promote drug use. We are just sharing experience and talking about it. Right. Disclaimer out.
Okay.
This research, legal, fully funded by government and other agencies, does have human trial, and they have human subjects that take these psilocybin.
Are they still doing trials?
Absolutely, they actually are looking more and more at these. Anyway, I'll talk about that later.
Okay.
So they have these subjects that come in. They actually inject them with the psilocybin, the drug, and then they have them in the fMRI machine, and they stare at this normal cross, normal cross. I forgot what it's called. Anyway, so look at that, just nothing, and then the drugs kick in because they need to have a control and after scan, right?
Yeah.
So, very interestingly, at the beginning of the research, their kind of hypothesis coming in was that, once you take psilocybin or LSD or these psychoanalytic drugs, psychoactive drugs,
Yeah.
you will have an increased blood flow in your brain in specific regions that target something, and they want to find out what it is. Very interestingly, it's the opposite. They find decrease in blood flow in a very specific region of our brain that is called the default neural network. Right. This is, again, a very, very, very like high level stuff that nobody really know what it does. Like neuroscience, you need to know, is a very fresh, new type of science that it's not really like physics where it's developed. It's quite new. It's quite young. Not a lot of stuff are known in the brain. Solidly.
Really?
Yes. So default neural network right now has, it's been termed the dark energy of the brain. Though it's not
Why?
completely known, right? We know there's a few things going on when this neural network gets light up, right?
Yeah.
Complex imaging, right? When we look at complex imagery, this part of our brain lights up. When we think about thinking, so meta thinking, right? that part meta analysis, meta thinking about thinking, that lights up. Thinking about yourself and planning ahead in the far future, that part lights out. Right.
That's very specific.
Very specific. Right. So it's kind of trying to say that this is, psychologists have been trying to say this is your ego, your self, your sense of self, your sense of belonging is in this neural network. Right. Of course, I'm no expert. Again, I want to state these are what people say when you take shrooms, DMT, psychologists refer to this as an ego death. When you experience ego death, where you experience a detachment from everything that you own or everything that have you in it, right? You want to say something just now?
Yeah, I just want to dial back a little here because you said the blood flow to this region called the default neural network decreases, right?
Yes, that's right.
Does that mean it's less activated? Does that mean there's less, right? Because I've read something, about weed. I'm sure you guys know this, but there's some sort of cognitive impairment.
That's right.
Temporarily, of course. It affects your normal functioning and all that stuff. I would imagine there's some kind of association.
Yeah, so I think there definitely is, but I would say personal experience, right? Because this research is really focused on psychedelic. I don't think they did a lot on the difference between weed and shrooms. For personal experience, having tripped on shrooms and having tripped on weed, there's miles of difference.
Right.
The similarities are there.
You wouldn't say would you say shrooms is like just on under like a different magnitude, or would you say the experience is completely different?
It's a completely different spectrum.
Right. If you smoke enough weed, are you gonna get that shroom high?
So at the start, no, absolutely not. Like even if you smoke the best of the best weed, like you concentrated CBD and THC, you're never gonna get that experience. It's on a different level of plane, but there's some similarities, like temporal differences, like temporal identification, kind of like your sense of time is distorted, and your vision is blurred. But when your vision is blurred on shrooms, you see things, right? It's different, because when you're high on shrooms, you see geometric patterns that come out of nowhere. When you're on weed, the idea of weed, it kind of like it inhibits your stop when you think of something, right? When you think of like word association, there's like this whole long line of thinking. When you're on weed, it doesn't end. Yeah. But normally you kind of stop at like 3 words because your brain just don't care anymore, right? But on weed, you have this thought and it just develops all the way there. But on shrooms, it injects new thoughts into it. That's my personal experience. It's not a medical thing, sorry. That's my opinion of it. You inject new thoughts into these pool, and then they get expanded infinitely, and it slowly infests your whole brain with this thought. Right. So,
I'll say my shroom experience is quite different, but let's not go into that. I want you to hear your...
Sure. So back to the medical research on what Imperial College is doing. It's very interesting because this... Why they want to do psychedelic in the first place, right? Psychedelic, this word came from 2 Greek words, I think Greek or Latin, right? Psyche and delos. Psyche is the mind. Delos is to reveal. Yeah. So there's a very, very classic saying in psychedelic or psychology, rather, is that psychedelic is to the mind is what the microscope is to biology, the telescope to astronomy, right? It reveals what is in your mind, and it reveals deeply to what one person's like psyche or the mind is really thinking about themselves. With that in mind, you like that pun? They thought, let's do some more research on this, and let's see how they could use this as a therapeutic way to like move past and to break through PTSD, for example. PTSD is something that they have also focused on. Another thing they've really focused on is cancer patients. Cancer patients often have a lot of existential issues. Just mention like watching The Matrix. Maybe they should watch The Matrix, right? They have a lot of existential anxiety because, sorry, I should mention specifically late-term cancer patients.
Yeah. Cancer patients should watch Matrix.
Now I'm gonna get
Young 2021. We're quoting you on this.
Maybe. Anyway, so why do they have this? Obviously, because they're gonna die, or they're facing death. Maybe they're gonna die, right? Yeah.
So let's watch Matrix. Maybe I'm living a fake life, and I'm gonna go.
Very interestingly, they prescribe them with psilocybin, and they find the treatment very effective in a way that
Effective in what sense, though?
now let's go into this in details. People who take this in cancer patients, at least anecdotally, some of them have very, very high score afterwards about themselves and about the outlook of life. They do this with taking the questionnaire at the start and then after, and
Right.
6 months after and a few months after. It's not just like right after or right during. Right?
Cool.
So the effects of psilocybin seems to have a long-lasting effect on these people's outlook in life and their sense of identity. I can't really be that specific because that's a very, very personal thing, right? It's a very personal question, and so I can't say maybe
Yeah.
they feel that they belong more to the world, or maybe they don't. They're more attached to it, and so they're okay with death. But the general consensus is that they have a better outlook, and they seem
Okay.
to be more healed in that sense, right?
Okay.
So medically speaking, what happens, or physically speaking, what happened is once you take these psychedelic drugs, that default neural network is less. It's kind of like less blood flow, right? What they like to call is kind of like a reset button on your computer. What happens a few months afterwards is they scan the brain again. They see that the network in that specific region has actually increased in the density. So more neurons have been created in that part after after that period,
So
because
it's like a permanent effect.
it's a permanent effect. Yes, everybody, a lot of people, I wouldn't say everybody, a lot of people who've experienced psychedelic drugs have reported a permanent change of their mental state.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have quoted that psychedelic drugs have actually been the psychedelic trip have been reported to be one of the most significant experiences in their lives, comparable to the birth of a child and the death of a loved one, right? And these are very, 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 very important events in your life, and they compare it to psychedelic drugs, right?
Damn.
That's a little bit odd. I mean, the research you brought up here is that there is a permanent effect that I don't disagree with. But the fact that you said because there's less blood flow into your default neural network,
Right.
and hence, all of a sudden 3 days later you're
There's
seeing
more neurons,
New
right?
neurons.
What is going on there?
Yeah.
As again, right? The research is very new and it's not well known. Obviously, my hypothesis is completely not based
I
on
guess
any
the
neuroscience.
hypothesis here is that because there's such a neuron deficiency,
Right.
and you sort of allowed your brain to understand that, there's a neuron deficiency.
Let's
in that
grow more
specific area.
neurons.
Yeah,
Grow
right.
more.
It all makes sense, right? It's kind of like a working out session where you tear down your muscles and you build more, right?
Yeah.
You have no blood flow, and maybe your brain's compensating by building more, right? Of course, maybe all fake, maybe completely nonsense to neuroscientists out there, but that's the result. Is there's more neurons in that region, and people identify and have a better, stronger understanding of themselves through questionnaires, through very subjective,
Yeah.
interview style, right, questions.
Yeah.
Because there's not really like a objective thing to say. How do I identify, right? Anyway,
Well, I guess there's like kind of could be a biological reason as
Yes.
to measuring
Yes.
your serotonin level in your brain, or not just surveying. I'm sure there's some sort of MRI scan you could do to
Yeah.
see how much your brain activates
Yeah.
when you're on that substance versus
Yeah.
when you're not, right?
yeah, exactly. So that's exactly what they saw, right? That neural network was off, and now that it's on, it seems higher density, and
Interesting.
because that region is kind of the self, it matches what the questionnaire says too, right? It could be that. Now it could be that people are lying, but the physical results don't lie. So
Yeah.
I think first of all, I think to wrap this up, it's a very, very interesting research area. And they're slowly finding more and more usage for psychedelics and very exciting results, right?
Right.
Cancer patients, a better self-understanding, a kind of like more oneness, unity in their feeling. These are all very important things. And also, another thing I wanted to mention, I forgot to mention actually, is a lot of people who have those experiences during the trip, they could be really bad trips. Some people who report during those trips are horrible. I feel like, I really had an existential crisis. But afterwards, 6 months after, they have great outlooks as well. So the quality of the trip is very interesting. The quality of the trip doesn't seem to have a direct correlation between the
It's more
the
about
effect.
a like physical, literal, biological
Yeah.
effect.
No wonder-
It could be. Of course. It's not definitive yet.
Okay, before we move on to the next topic,
Sure.
I just want to two side note that I want to point out. Okay, first off, getting stuck into an MRI machine after doing DMT or shroom or acid sounds like the worst fucking idea when you have stairs across, especially across. That seems like a lot of like trigger warning.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I've done MRI. Before,
Really?
MRI
I've never done that.
scans
Yeah.
before.
It's just like kind of thing.
Yeah, you're stuck in a
Big
tunnel,
magnet, yeah.
big magnet tunnel that is loud. And imagine
Bright lights
with
and everything.
That experience,
Yeah,
when
yeah.
you're on
Yeah.
psychedelic sounds like a nightmare to
Yeah.
me. That's first off. Second off, you mentioned a lot of them report having a very like different outlook, and I think that also aligns with my experience.
Right.
A lot of my more frequent psychedelic user.
Really?
Friends that no, it's like when you're on acid or on shroom. What I've gathered from just my experience or experience of my friends is like people usually notice something about themselves. Obviously, maybe it's to do with the whole ego thing and neural network thing. Is that they can sort of take a step back,
Right.
and
See the bigger picture.
See the bigger
Yeah,
picture
yeah.
also, or find out something that maybe you've been trying to ignore.
Yeah.
So.